really feeling something the entire time, nothing has made me do that more than Hereditary since probably Goodnight Mommy.
Oh, I liked Goodnight Mommy.
I did too. I really liked it, but like
Cutting the lips was a little.
In both circumstances, I'm just like, I'm tense and I don't know what's gonna happen next, and I'm like so focused on this fucking movie in a way that I'm not always.
I felt that way at the time with Hereditary, so I guess I should give it more credit. But literally in the hallway walking out of the theater, so many plot holes / things that maybe could make sense if someone smarter than me explained it to me. Mm-hmm. But like there were so many things that I'm like, I don't understand that. I don't understand that. I don't like this movie.
You should look up interviews with the writer-director, because unlike a lot of filmmakers, he answers all the questions.
Oh, okay.
Like there are a lot of people who are like, well, what do you think it meant? And he's like, no, it's a demon, and I'll tell you where he's from.
Here's the rules.
Alex Garland does that too.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's very direct. Hey, are we testing? Or
No,
are you
we're live, bro.
Oh, we're live.
Oh, this is part of it?
Yeah.
This is being
all the time.
This is being animated live.
This is
It's a terrible strain on the
yeah,
wrists.
Yeah. All right, so should we start? Never mind.
We can, but that's
to
how
talk
it has.
about Alex Garland.
No,
again.
we should. It's nice.
I mean, he's good. Annihilation was that movie for me.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
I'm saying.
Annihilation.
Oh, I love that too.
Annihilation ended up making sense to me in the sense that I can parse everything in a way that feels intentional to me, and even if I'm misaligned on a few points with what the director intended, that's fine. It like makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Hereditary, I have questions that I don't have answers for. It's like the first time I saw 2001, and that took me like 3 more viewings to like. And I think I will like Hereditary if I figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's true that there are answers to everything, then and I trust you, like, then okay.
Yeah.
Because I felt very keyed up the entire time, for sure. It's impactful as like a baseball bat of emotion, yeah.
Yeah. I also feel like, and I guess this is like, it gets down to the core of what you want a movie to be. I keep saying that Hereditary is like very impactful for me this year, and it made me feel things like the entire time. I'm riveted and was thinking about it for weeks afterwards. I will never watch that movie again. I will absolutely never watch that movie again.
Really?
Yes.
Because it's too rough?
It's really rough and very uncomfortable, and like
You gotta see
and
Antichrist!
There's also a part of me that doesn't want to watch it again because like, what if I watch it a second time and I like it less? Or like more questions come
I know
out.
what
Like,
you-
I have this experience that I want to have forever.
Okay.
Like
And relive
childhood.
and relive
Yeah.
infinitely?
Yes.
Welcome to the Groundhog Day episode of Frame Rate.
Segues are cool.
Not Hereditary. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Swaim.
I'm the other host, Abe Epperson.
And with us is our special guest.
Daniel O'Brien, hello.
Hello. Thanks for coming, Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me.
What's the thing we say about at the top of the podcast that says
We rate frames?
Did you say that?
No.
No.
This is frame
I
rate.
mean-
We rape frames.
But that's not true because I did say it when I asked. So then when you said, did you say it, I should have said yes.
Oh, I just wasn't focused. I don't listen to you.
1993, directed by Harold Ramey, Groundhog Day, stars Bill Murray, Andy McDowell, Chris Elliott, Stephen Tobolowsky. Ah, my favorite.
I need to know if you're being cute or if you think it's pronounced Raimi.
Oh, Ramus?
Yeah.
I did think it's pronounced Ramey.
That's
Really?
Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi. No, this is
No,
Harold
I know
Ramis.
that. I thought they were both pronounced Ramey.
Nah, spelled and pronounced differently.
Pronounced the samey. That's how I remembered it.
Uh-huh.
Wow, okay. So the Ramus is not pretentious. It's,
No.
it's like, yeah, Ramus, like
Yeah.
it's spelled. Anyway, Chris Elliott, Stephen Tobolowsky, Brian Doyle Murray, and a Hey, Pay My Brother role. Written by Danny Rubin, who also wrote the Freaky Friday reboot, along with Harold Ramis. Yeah.
Welcome to the Groundhog Day podcast. I'm just going to do that every now and then.
Every time. Oh, to get the cyclical
Yeah,
effect? Yeah. Where we rate frames.
Yes.
Daniel, you selected this film.
I did. I love it very much. And I rewatched it, I think like a year and a half ago for this show that I used to do for The Old Place. And still rewatched it again this morning, literally this morning, because I wanted to be even more prepared. And I still found stuff that I didn't see the first time. The first 90 times.
I got one. I watched it last night, and I got a line that I was like, that is a perfect line.
Yeah,
I was upset you picked this movie.
I know.
because I thought there wouldn't be anything to talk about besides, yeah, it's funny, it's good. And I did get so much more out of it looking at it with a critical eye.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it's a classic. There are things that there are like three main things, like broad strokes things that I'm curious to talk about with you guys. One of them is the obvious, very problematic nature of the main romance of the film that we know is problematic now, that wasn't as clear in the 90s.
Like when he's compiling a list.
Right, the you could write books about the power imbalance in their relationship. Phil and Rita, Andie MacDowell's character. That's one of the things. Two, this is one of those movies where the behind-the-scenes drama of it is very interesting and a thing that I get hung up on a lot with when there's a classic movie, and in my heart I want to believe like there was a great writer who wrote something amazing, and he got a director who understood it, and he got a cast that was on board, and they just made this perfect thing that it was in one person's mind, and then they made it. And when I hear about a movie like Groundhog Day, where it was such a troubled production, and Bill Murray was going through marital issues and was a terror to everyone on set,
Hurricane.
It's almost every other Murray production is like that.
Yeah, and it was like it was so toxic that it fractured the relationship between Murray and Ramis
This is the one.
Until Ramis was practically on his deathbed.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, and like what that means for art is a thing that I get hung up on a lot. And
nothing. Next.
No. The third thing I had. Oh shoot! I forgot
That's
the third
fine.
thing.
There's no need to table of contents. Let's start with the first
that's
thing.
fair.
Because we are covering the 40-Year-Old Virgin today as well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe my bar was like reset by it because 40-Year-Old Virgin is so wildly offensive to me now that I thought Groundhog's Day was not problematic, and let me explain why. Because I think everyone, we don't even have to reiterate the plot, but when he's trapped in the series of loops, and of course he starts initially using it to just have like a little black book of every woman in the town that he can have sex with because he knows all their likes and dislikes. Obviously that's problematic on its face, but and then he just does it to Andie MacDowell next, and you're like, well, that's terrible that you're equating those things. I remember it as ending with, he does the snowman thing, it works, they have sex, and that's the end. But there's this whole period where she slaps him 20 times, he completely, she comes on to him, and he denies her, so that he can go, what I'm getting at is Bill Murray is the Buddha in this, so that he can go completely despair, try to kill himself over and over. When that doesn't work, serves the community, and that's when he finally grows, and then he and Andie MacDowell can fall in love because it's genuine. And I'm just saying the level of sophistication of like that love relationship in 1988 compared to Andy Spitzer and Catherine Keener in 40-Year-Old Virgin in 2005, it's insane.
You said this movie 1988, it was.
I'm sorry, 93.
Written
93.
in 1990,
93.
came out in 93. Yeah.
93.
Those are the only dates that I remember.
That was
in all of history.
Beetlejuice. I'm mixing up my notes.
I think the problem, what it comes down to for me, and I can also look past this problem because the movie wants us, by the movie's logic, true love exists, and it's a magical thing that is governed by nature or God. It might as well be, and you take it at face value that true love exists, and it exists between Andie MacDowell's Rita and Bill Murray's Phil,
because he knows when he first saw her.
Right, the movie says love is real and it's shared with these two people, and I was like, I can let my 2018 emotions take a back seat and just enjoy this movie and believe that they love each other. But what I keep coming back to is that if you extrapolate their relationship and you go further and further into their relationship,
no, you can't do that.
Right, there will always be two different stories. Rita's story, like, how did you meet your husband? It's like, well, I started working on this job and I thought he was an asshole, and then the next day he was just like transformed. My initial impression was wrong. He was a sweet man, like the community loved him, and he was a musician. Yeah, and I love that. And he was humble, and he's nice to his mom, and these are all things that are important to me. And he was just like checked off every box. And his story,
and he's literally mildly psychic. Like,
yes.
I was about to cheer to world peace, and he cheered to world peace. He ordered
Right.
my favorite drink. That's nuts.
Right. And his story is, I met your mother, and then I had 1,000 years to fuck around,
Yeah.
murder people, kill myself,
Yeah.
learn everything there is to know about her, learn a bunch of lessons in the process, and like become a better human, certainly. And then
That's what I'm saying is that beat where he devotes like a year of his life, presumably, to trying to save the old man.
Yeah.
That is growth work that didn't need to be in the movie. So I appreciate that.
It is growth work. Like the amount of lessons he learns and the change that he goes through, I really do buy. But there's one final step of that change that would show real, actual human growth in him, and that would be him the next day saying, listen, the reason that I seem perfect to you is because I was allowed to be an asshole to you for 900 years. And got all that out of my system and changed. Like there's a power imbalance in their relationship that is always going to be an issue for me.
Well, what's weird, it's the same as Twilight. He's essentially hundreds of years older
Right.
than her.
Well, actually, there's been a few people who have tried to figure it out, so there's several different options
Yeah.
for answers. What culture said, compiled all of the reasonable amount of time it takes to be really good at ice sculpturing or piano and
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh,
like
that's
that.
such a good
And-
internet nerdy way to figure that,
and
that out.
then they just compiled how long it would take, and they gave it a day count, and it's just under 34 years is what
Yeah.
they said. Now Harold Ramis has said 10,000 years once. He's
Yeah.
also said in different interviews 10 years
Yeah.
and 30 to 40 years.
I've heard 10 years from Harry Ramey. I've heard
Steve
Raimi.
10,000 years was misattributed to Danny Rubin at one point as well. Like he said in a Ringer interview, people say 10,000, that I said 10,000 years because that's a Buddhist number and I'm a Buddhist, but I never actually said that.
Like
but I
the
also
soul's
don't
ascension.
care. Like they intentionally,
It doesn't-
they don't need people to figure out how many years it was.
Do you guys want someone also compiled literally just how many days are on screen? So the minimum days.
It's like 37, 38.
38.
38?
38.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. We
Nicely
all
done.
looked at the IMDb page.
Can I do a one small, brief, bizarre trivia thing that I've been excited about because I
course.
just learned it this morning and I want to share it with Abe very much?
Oh, yeah.
Stephen Tobolowsky often goes to give speeches with the Oakland Raiders because the Oakland Raiders, or I guess the Vegas Raiders now, the Raiders watch Groundhog Day all the time.
What? Who decides that?
We don't exactly know why. It's the best guess of sports internet has been that the Raiders make the same mistakes over and over again, and so the coaches make them watch Groundhog
Till
Day
you
because
learn.
you have
As
to
a
learn from your
tradition.
mistakes. We're gonna have Ned Ryerson come out
And they
and
fucking
talk to
hate
you about
this-
Buddhism.
They probably
so
hate
much.
it. They probably just hate everything about
He does
it.
the whistling belly button for him.
Yeah.
The whole bit.
He-
I think it's really interesting that Danny Rubin's Buddhist because I didn't know that. And I totally, completely got that this time. Because one of the things I love about it is, and that makes so much sense now. I'm like, oh, okay, then that's why. Everything matches up perfectly. It basically follows the life story of the Buddha in like an encapsulated way, or of Siddhartha rather, and also the in like the first act, Bill Murray only basically exclusively says things that refer to his ambitions for the future or regrets about the past.
Right.
And then, of course, by the end, the whole point is he's stuck in the present. That's the only moment you ever have. Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. It's so Buddhist. It's crazy Buddhist.
Ned Ryerson also has like a sleeper line because he's like Steve Buscemi and Barton Fink, like just like throwing a bunch of words at you, especially the first day when Bill Murray isn't know anything. And so there was a line when he's explaining that he does insurance that I'm sure you guys probably picked up on, but for some reason I always just missed it. But it's a perfect line for the movie. It's like a resonant line, and it's, "Tell me, ever heard of single premium life? Because I think that could be the ticket for you."
Wow. Such a great movie.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Single
Okay.
premium
I
life.
thought you were going when
Get
you were
back
talking about,
to your own
Yeah.
solo life, but it's really good now. Yeah.
One of my favorite things about that opening scene. That's so clever, and I didn't get that because this time I was hung up on. I never really focus on the details of how he tries to get Phil to remember him until this viewing, and it's his greatest hits are so terrible. It was I did the belly button whistle at the talent show. I got shingles so bad I almost missed graduation. I dated your sister. I dated your sister a few times until you told me to stop. Bing.
But yeah,
Bing. Those are such bad hits.
You omitted the best part, which is Bing and Bing again.
Yeah. Bing.
Almost didn't graduate. Bing again. I love.
And he's like,
Ned.
they call me Ned, now they call me Ned the Bull, and he does like a cat's paw
Cat.
every time he mimes being a bull. He just does this paw.
Perfect.
Ned, I'd love to stand here and keep talking to you, but I'm not going to. Yeah. What are you doing for dinner? Something else.
Yeah.
That's Stephen Tobolowsky's Ned Ryerson, and I think he's my favorite part of the movie.
I think he's the
consistently.
prophet of the movie when you secretly, because he has life figured out.
Yeah.
He really does. He's, even though he's an idiot for mixed metaphor reasons and cat paws, but he is just so enthusiastic about what's next, and he remembers everything, and like he is like a model of like how, like, he would kill Groundhog Day if he was in that situation. Like, he'd do it in like 8 days and be done.
The one, and this is more a reflection on the 90s than it is anything else. When Phil decides, I'm going to hug and like stroke Ned Ryerson
Right.
for a while.
As a
and just,
tactic.
like play with his back a little bit and delivers one of my favorite lines that I always wish I had like the gall to use on someone I'm seducing, which is, I don't know what we've got going on, but can you cancel it?
Yeah.
It's like such an open, amazing, bold
Yeah, it really
invitation.
is.
That's an
And
improv.
Ned gets really uncomfortable and leaves. That's mid-90s gay panic. That
It's true.
we but there's a good gay moment in this movie that I must have missed the first 900 times that I watched it, which was when he's proving to Rita that he's God. When Phil is proving to Rita that he's a god, he's going through the diner like, this is Doris' story, this is this person's story, this is Bill. Loves this town. He's been here for 3 years since he left Penn State. He paints toy soldiers, and he's gay. And Bill goes, I am. And not in a like,
Oh, I didn't.
not
I
in a
missed
like,
that as
you
well.
surprised me, or like you outed me in a cruel, jokey way, in a very
yeah.
proud, like, yeah, what the fuck? Of course I am.
Yeah.
What of it?
Hey, this guy's knows
it's like
stuff.
Punxsutawney.
Yeah,
We have like proudly out gay waiters in Punxsutawney in 1993.
Every time I've seen it, I somehow missed the side of Michael Shannon's face in that diner scene. It's Michael Shannon's first role ever.
Yeah.
Feature.
Gets the WrestleMania tickets.
He just goes, "What?" in the first scene.
Yeah.
He gets another line later, but
And if you missed that, then you also missed a thing that I missed until this morning that I wanted to weave a big long fan theory about, but I can't, because shortly after Bill gets outed and says, I am gay and I'm proud of it, go fuck yourself, the world who doesn't accept me, Chris Elliott's character Larry enters, passes Bill, and very clearly checks out his ass and like does another look at him as he's walking away. And as I was watching it, I started writing my notes like, Larry gay fan theory ? And then he's clearly into Nancy by the end of the film, so there's nowhere near enough
could be bi.
evidence. He could be bi. That's true. He could be bi, but it was not as explored as I'd like it to be.
That's got to be just the Chris Elliott choice on the day. For
There's
sure,
a lot of scenes though, like for example when he's like trying to help Pop, right, and he goes to the hospital. When he walks through the hallways, he sees there's a kid with a broken leg.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I missed that. Is that the kid
And
who falls from the tree?
that's
Yeah.
the kid he later catches from the tree.
That little brat.
Also, the every time he passes the homeless man, the exact same sequence of things happens behind him from the extras.
cars?
Which not only the cars, but the people have the exact same interaction. And just the idea that, and I read on IMDb that not only obviously you have to nail that every time, which you don't actually have to. It's like attention to detail you didn't need. That's awesome. And they shot it everything in multiple weather conditions because the weather was so variable and they had to have control over the weather in the scenes to make the progression of time clear, because of course one of the main cues is he wakes up and he's like, oh, now it's not snowy, it's the next day.
Right. That's one of the things that I love so much about Harold Ramis as a director, is that he was thinking about that, and not even just like filming things for safety. He genuinely this comes from an interview with Stephen Tobolowsky, who gives the best interviews on the planet, where Ramis was just like, the weather is a character in this film. It means something if it's a sunny day, if it's a rainy day, if it's a snowy day, if it's a cloudy day. It's not even just about the production of this film. we're saying something with what the weather is every day, and they inevitably settled on cloudy, which is the right choice in
Right,
ways
yeah.
that I can't totally explain, but it is the right choice.
Well,
And
it's
I
the
just
opening and closing shots also
Yeah.
under the credits. I'm not sure what I got out of that, but maybe something.
I mean, the opening of this movie is like the opening of a lot of 90s movies where it's just music and credits and like flying over a city. They did the same thing with
well, it was
Multiplicity.
like it's roiling clouds.
Yeah.
And the only thing, and then at the end, it's still clouds, which is another Buddhist thing, possibly.
Is that is Klaus Buddhist?
Well, I mean, going from a state of chaos to peaceful stillness.
Oh.
But I'm reaching because I read a lot of Buddhist shit into it this
I
time.
actually knew a Baptist cloud though.
Crescent cloud. Like there was another or a line I found really resonant this time, but maybe that's because I like Buddhism. But I do feel encouraged by the fact that Danny Rubin said he's Buddhist. Is at the end when he wakes up and it's finally different, and he says something's different. And
Yeah.
she says good or bad, and he says anything different is good. That's
Yeah.
a very Buddhist ethos.
I like that. Another line of his that I love. I don't know if this is Buddhist because I have not read into Buddhism at all. Forgive me. When he's talking to the doctor, who is Harold Ramis, and he says, "What if there is no tomorrow? There wasn't one today." I'm like, that's such a profound, amazing statement to think about, and also like a very literal description of what's going on in his
Yeah.
life at the time.
And I thought equally moving when he says to Andy McDowell, "What are you doing here the next morning?" Because she wasn't there last night.
Yeah.
And she says, I bought you.
bought you,
I
I own
own
you."
you. Very Buddhist. That's a very Buddhist sentiment.
To own people.
I bought you. I own you. I did laugh out loud at that line, though. Go ahead.
I finally remembered the third thing from my table of contents.
Yeah.
We're still on the first thing, but before I forget it again, the third thing was I really
Just hop
wanted
around.
to dig in with Abe about you as a filmmaker and a director and an occasional cinematographer, what all of your thoughts in that realm was for this movie, because all of mine are actor stuff and writer stuff, and I never look at it with an eye for that was a good shot. Like I don't know what this movie is like to a director or a cinematographer.
I think the game of this, like if I were to talk to the cinematographer, I feel like the thing that we would talk about would probably be the game of the shots. Like just like in comedy, there's a game of like, so what do you do? And it's usually, it means it's like a limitation or it's a thing that you're always striving to do. And this movie is denser, like in terms of the depth of shot than most things, to give you to give you all of those things that we're talking about, how there's like multiple layers of the shots. So you see the background, and I think that there's something where depending on where he is and where he enters or he exits or where he's occupying in the shot, like there's a reason for why he is where he is. Usually when he's learning, he's just right up front and close.
And you mean the groundhog now, right?
Yeah. Bill, yeah.
A lot of people don't know the groundhog is
Bill.
always in frame. Like
Yeah.
there's
Just
always a
like-
groundhog in every single shot. Usually,
If you can't
Famously played by Chris Elliott.
voiced, in the Disney Channel spin-off series.
Yeah. I do want to say that one thing you guys
Yeah.
were just talking about how the attention to detail of like things like in the hospital, about how it's always the same choreography. It's interesting because I thought like, yeah, that is a nice touch. It's also way smarter to do from a filmmaking standpoint, especially if you're inside and don't have a lot of control. It's a lot easier to do that than make up new.
Oh, you're like,
Right.
why would they do different
Like,
choreography?
yeah,
That's
right.
true.
This is
This
because
is the
then
day
they can
where we
just
do-
keep doing takes.
right? We do 15 takes of him rounding the corner and checking his pockets for money for pops, and then not giving it to
And
him.
then-
Yeah.
Or sometimes he gives it to him, and like that's great. That's we just got a quarter of the movie done.
And it's when it's like, guy in the background, do something different? No.
No.
Do same thing.
I told you what to do. You just keep doing that until
Yeah,
we're done.
That's
There was-
true. But it works.
It works.
And that's what I think. That segues nicely to something I just think as comedian minds that we can all appreciate is it's one of the perfect premises because it's self-renewing.
Yeah.
And I like this time I finally tracked it where it's like day one, obviously just setup day. Day 2, premise introduction. Day 3, high on superpowers, acting like the world isn't real. Day 5, superpowers hit their zenith where they become no longer fun. Day 6, bored master of the universe. And if you think about it, each of those is a totally different sketch game.
Yes. Yeah.
Every single day
Is a new development.
and then, of course, it becomes impossible to sort which the days are because they start skipping ahead a lot more.
Yeah,
but
montages.
every single day is like in UCB or any sort of improv class, you learn how to like take a premise and, you know, blow it up and expand it in a different direction. And this does that to itself in such a realistic, organic way because
Yeah.
it's how almost any human would go in this situation.
I've never seen a more complex idea or script made to seem so simple than Groundhog Day. Like I couldn't.
Yeah.
Give me 1,000 years, I wouldn't write Groundhog Day. But this person, Danny Rubin, has this premise, and then everything in terms of story beats naturally flows from it, and even separate from story beats, the decision to, all right, now we're not doing the 6 a.m. Sonny and Cher song. Now we're doing, this is just a series of shots that are just like the same 10 seconds of Annie McDowell and Bill Murray in the
Slaps.
restaurant. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't need to see him waking up anymore. I know that I've overstayed that welcome, so like we've naturally moved into the part where we're just chopping.
And it
It's like,
starts right
this is
away
so
where
organic and perfect.
Even I think day 3 and 4, day 1 it sets up that the very first guy he sees is that guy that accosts him when he steps out of his door and
Yeah.
says, "Yeah, do you think it's gonna be spring?" I predict March 21st. I think that actually is the first day of spring, and he just waits.
Yeah.
We don't see him on days 2 and 3, but he comes back on 4, and yeah, all Danny Rubin and Harold Ramis co-wrote, but like the time mastery is so admirable because one of the greatest feats of film is to disjoint time. And in this, time is disjointed both in the standard filmic way and literally in the plot. And they do whatever the fuck they want. And yet it's so clear all the time.
That guy, by the way, I mean, you could fan theory anything you want about the scenes that we don't see, but he seems like one of the only people who is sort of free from Phil's wrath throughout all of this, because a lot of people get wronged by him. This is a guy who on the first day does that cute March 21st interaction, and like it doesnes stop his gait. He's just like, I think that is the first day of spring, and it just goes on about his day. We have another scene with him where Phil does that like poem about winter slumbering and how it's going to emerge, and says ciao, and like kisses him on the,
and he's just mildly
he's like,
perplexed.
He leaves smiling. He's
there's
ciao.
There's a middle beat where
and
he
then
comes
he
out and
walks
he's
away like I'm ready to face my day now.
And
he's just always chipper.
You know that there's one day where like Phil just woke up, was tired of it, just beat the shit
Shoved
out of
him down the stairs.
Yeah, and he just was like, "Why?"
Well, there's a whole big section where it seems like Phil is mostly sleeping, also lots of days away.
Yeah, he
in the hotel room,
drinks in his hotel room or whatever. Did you know that they originally had a completely different structure? The original script had it so that it would start at Sonny and Cher, and see, we didn't get. But the studio wanted it so that it was like there's an act 1 where we just introduce the character.
Right.
They wanted it to be. I'm gonna
media
pronounce
res.
this in media res. Yeah, I don't know if it's in media res or res. Is it res?
In media res.
Like
where
Ramis.
He's already in the middle of his Groundhog Day thing, and I think what they landed on was better. Except there's one. They get robbed of one reveal, which I would have liked, which is in the version where they start in media res. He punches Ned Ryerson every single day, and we don't know why until he decides to stop punching Ned Ryerson, and then we meet him. It's like, that would have been a fun
where
reveal.
you're like, you should punch him.
Yeah, right.
Although that means that for all the goodness that he eventually does do, and how much there's the Buddhist element of it, like there's something haunting about like they'll be in his head. Phil will never be able to forget that one time that he like pulled out the eyes of a man or something.
Right, yeah.
Like there's something haunting.
Well, they
did.
said explicitly that they very intentionally didn't go as far, but I think any adult who's like engaged with the pain and horror of the news of the world sees this movie and you're like, Well, they're glossing over the part where he commits like crazy violence. Because if he's at the point where he's numb and wants to kill himself, you're skipping the part where he like burns the hospital down just to see what happens.
Well, that's the thing that I talked about on.
And they're like, yeah, we didn't want to go there for obvious reasons.
Right. Yeah, and I got flack for that when I talked about that on my old show. We did Obsessive Pop Culture Disorder. I on a tangent was like, also we didn't see it, but like he probably raped people, right? And he probably murdered people. We just have to assume that he did that because he drove a groundhog off a cliff and murdered himself multiple times and like endangered two people. Like
had sex with almost every woman in the town under like crazy false pretenses.
Yes, and drove around with two drunk people like crashing
Ramming
into
shit,
things.
yeah.
And I don't know enough about mental health to know who's siding even on this, but a lot of people were like, that's insane that you would think just because he commits suicide that he would also be a murderer and a rapist. And I was like, I don't know if that's insane, but I'm washing my hands of this and I'm backing up and I'm
a sociopath.
Right. That seems like sociopathic behavior.
I don't think normal rules apply because how can everything not feel consequenceless?
He thinks he's a god.
He thinks there's no, after it resets, there's no like consequences, not only for himself but for the world. So who gives a shit?
Yeah. And everyone's alive
different than
again.
suicide. You think time is broken and the world is dead,
right?
And everything's just essentially like a hologram,
right? He's not like just depressed suicidal. He's this doesn't matter, and I don't feel like being awake for this many hours right now. Like I saw every suicide as like I'm staying in
cut
bed
this
for
day
a while.
short.
Yeah.
It's after the first one. The first one he probably hoped it would work. He's like, I'm getting my courage up to do this.
Yeah, which is a big. I mean, there's some days he woke up and he felt like he was in purgatory, and on other days he felt like he was in hell.
And that's all you have is the present moment, and only you can change internally to make the present feel better, and then you get to move forward.
Welcome to the Groundhog Day episode.
It's so tasty.
I thought we were here to talk about Alex Garland.
But like it's so full of great lessons in such a way where you don't think about that at all unless you have a podcast to do where you're examining it critically.
Which do we?
I'll start recording now.
I also like. There's a scene that. So I just want to touch on this like darkness aspect that we were just talking about. I have one more thing to say.
I do too. After
which
you.
is that
I have a lot more things to say
about darkness.
The darkness thing. I'm super happy that they went with what they went with. It makes it. That's what makes this a classic. Is it's like, it's just enough comedy, just enough like conflict. They should
reboot it with hella murders.
There is one darkness scene that I wish they did differently, even though I do like what they resolved on, and it's cute and it's like I like it. The other version that I've heard of like what the scene would be a really cool shot and sequence, which is after the second day or whatever, the breaking of the pencil. It was originally conceived that he just like went to town on his hotel room and like slashed everything and did all this shit like graffitied the walls, and it ends with him shaving his head, and the camera was supposed to go to his eyes and then pan out, and his shaved head is now his
hair again, and he's in bed.
Yeah. And
cut to Chris Elliott going prima donnas.
Yeah. And the groundhog saying like,
that would have been cool.
What truly disturbs me was always the thought that just so like obviously there's no real answer to how he's experiencing this or why it's him, but it seems to me that it's probably an M theory situation where there's infinite multiple universes and he's traversing them and resetting on the time axis.
Okay.
In which case, everything he does, he leaves, but that universe persists as a pocket universe. Which, if you watch it that way, it's just fucking awful.
It's just Rick and Morty now.
Yeah.
There's evidence to that because you have, and I know this is to support the true love thing, but I'm going to pervert it to be a conspiracy theory. Andie MacDowell has deja vu, which you only put in intentionally, and it's kind of like a Matrix glitch. It's like, I guess their true love means that I'm not supposed to be creeped out when they finally do fall in love after what, to her perception, is only one day, as Dan pointed out. No matter what. And they do everything. I think they're very skillful about doing it as sensitively as possible because they're like, now he's not trying to hound her for sex. Man, the saving grace is that he learns his lesson, but when
Yeah.
he's pushing her for sex, it's pretty goddamn
it's
pushy.
really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
rough. But I think their point is, yeah, that was bad. And so I'm like, oh, okay, let's
Yeah.
see where this goes. And I think they do everything they can to like mitigate that, but there's no way to not think about just what are all these, I don't know, you still did all these things, and even if pocket universes don't persist, you remember doing all that
He remembers
shit.
doing all of those things,
All the bad
and,
stuff.
and will never be truly connected to her because he will, unless he shares all of this stuff that
Yeah.
he did with her, which I don't imagine he's going to do.
And I know there's people who are fine with like, yeah, you can have past partners. Of course, that doesn't bother me as long as
No,
it's
no,
over.
no.
He's like,
one of my past partners was you when you were not happy about it.
but also like, I fucked a town. The whole
Yeah.
town's like women. All of them.
And guess what, Bill? Yeah, guess how I found out he was gay? I was bored one day and I
makes
tried
sense.
this out.
Yeah.
There's actually I get that idea from a line from the Groundhog Day musical that there was
I didn't know
never
there
a
was
chance.
one.
Oh, Tim Minchin did it.
Ah.
Tim Minchin is one of my favorite people
He's
on the
great.
planet. He's a genius. And there's a line in one of his songs, the Phil character songs, where I slept with 90% of women in Punxsutawney from 18 to 84 and one dude when I was bored. And I'm like, Bill, the
Yeah.
only gay guy that we know is Bill.
That's a
Bill.
reference. Yeah.
There's also one other weird magic thing. This is where I thought you were going, where you were talking about breaking the rules of true love or whatever. Is that I don't know if this was ever in any kind of original version of the screenplay or anything, but the black bartender who gets no lines gets a couple of shots that are just on him, and like you see him shake his head in one scene when Phil says something stupid, and then in the next day,
that's right. Okay.
when they order the same drink, and she's like, "What should we drink to?" And he says, "I think we should drink to world peace," because he learned yesterday that's what she drinks to. She always drinks to world peace, and it's a successful encounter. We see the black bartender again, shaking his head again, and I'm like,
look at
he
that.
fucking knows. He knows it's Groundhog Day. He knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the first
It's true.
time he says, he's like, "Can I get another one of these and put some alcohol in it this
Yeah.
time or something like
Yeah,
that?" Like
good
he's
line.
just being a dick.
Yeah.
So I just think that he's always a dick. To
No,
that guy.
I think there's clues. Like
Right.
the clocks in the diner are all stopped.
They're all frozen. Yeah.
No one mentions it. Yeah.
In the first draft also there was supposed to be a moment where Andie MacDowell's character also mentions that she's like, she confesses in one day that like, I'm also in time loops.
That's
What?
my favorite thing that was an alternate ending for this, that Phil wakes up on February 3rd and then we find out that Andie MacDowell's in a time loop. And when I heard that, I was like, you should have done that, and then like just kept making this movie. Like season 2 of this movie is we have two people who understand that time loops exist. Andie MacDowell has to wake up every morning and convince Phil that she's stuck in a time loop. And he agrees with her because he understands this, and the rest of the town doesn't. And now he's trying to find out. And
but his
she's try-
memory
like-
is still blanked when it resets, right?
Yes, he
Yeah.
still wakes up in the morning surprised that it's February 3rd.
Yeah.
And he needs to like be really excited, and she has to be like, yeah, I know this is huge for you, but this is my 900th February 3rd,
I'm doing
and I
this.
need you to get up to speed. We need to work on me and figure out what my version of becoming a good person is, because I was already pretty fucking good, Phil. So
But-
we need to like
See,
together crack this case.
I assumed it was the gods of journalism who were like, his segment is not good enough. Like, he's not putting his heart into
He
it.
never mentioned Chekhov.
And then when he does, he uses French poetry in it, and it's really uplifting. That is the final day.
Speaking of French poetry, probably my favorite line in the movie, because it just seems so real. This is when he's like trying to win over Andy, but his inner jerk overcomes him, is when he's talking to her about what she did in college. She's like, believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry. He goes, no, what a waste of time. And it seems so real and genuine. And like, it's true. It is a waste of time.
But that I found to be really irked me later, because that's what like revealed to me, and it's okay because he comes around, but it's that it's really fucked up, his initial intentions with Andie MacDowell, because he wants to do to her the same thing he did with all the other women, and literally the moment he's himself, he's like, yeah, I don't care about this. And she's
Right.
like, well, then why would we end up together in bed? And you're like, yeah, that's the real him. Don't fall for his trickery. Poor Andie MacDowell.
But if he lived 10,000 years, his life up to this point is nothing.
But it's funny that, okay,
Comparatively.
even if it's 8 years, it's an inescapable thing because, yes, the time is enough time to learn to become a good person and deserve Andy McDowell. But now he's 40 years older than her.
Right.
Like inside himself.
Right. He's like a 90-year-old man.
But
now.
that's the sequel would work. She could catch up. That's
Yeah.
the deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why you need that.
Right, because you'd have
And Jean-Luc Picard is there playing the flute.
you'd have a couple of beats
or-
where she's
yeah.
trying to figure out if she's going crazy. Then you'd have some beats where they're working together, and maybe they have a fight. And then you have beats where it's just like, I'm not going to tell him. I'm not going to get him up on board. I'm just going to fuck off and fuck around and do my own thing for a while. And here we are writing the Groundhog Day sequel.
Because that's the other main thing they didn't explore, which I would in a sequel, is travel. Because even
Yes.
as him, I was like, you know that the hurricane doesn't strike or the snowstorm doesn't strike until the afternoon. You
Just
never
wake
once
up and drive
and
out.
drive out of town. You never drive
That
immediately
would've
out of
been
town.
a
He
good-
always goes to the groundhog ceremony.
Not only that, think about this. He always walks the same way down the same street by choice.
Right. I assume that that's just stuff that they let out. Like there's one time that he drove as far as that he could and then
Nothing happened. Yeah.
fell
Yeah.
asleep at the wheel or whatever and woke up the next day back.
Right,
But I would love to
believe-
see Andy McDowell in a TV series doing that shit, going
Yeah.
to different places. That'd be fun.
Yeah, because you get on a flight,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, and fly somewhere, and then have like 10 minutes of something else.
This is a
different
boring
town.
show. You flights in real time.
Yeah.
And you see the airport and a little bit of the outside and it ends.
Hey, if they canceled LA to Vegas and that flight attendant's show
and the
from
loop.
years ago,
Yeah.
That's true.
do you feel this is something I didn't? In my memory, Chris Elliott's character was always like a dork and kind of a loser. Watching it this morning with an eye on him, he's much more assertive for the first like 3/4 of the movie, and only really becomes a dork when Phil is cool. When Phil is like a good
Starts
humble
using
guy.
his magic against him. Yeah.
Yeah, when Phil is a great guy, this is when suddenly Larry is like hitting on Nancy and she's super not into it, and that's when he goes up on the stage and is like, "No
Yeah.
one's gonna bid on me," and the old lady bids on him
This
for
lot is withdrawn.
2 bits.
Yeah.
And we're all supposed to laugh at Chris Elliott and like, what's his fucking crime though? He was
No,
a guy who
he
was
seems like normal guy.
he was a really normal guy and was like always with Andy McDowell. Was like, Phil is really a jerk and you have to get used to him and I'm sorry. And he wasn't like a toady. He wasn't taking Phil's shit. He was
Yeah.
coming back to him with his own jokes. And then once Phil's arc is complete, then it's like, all right, well, we need a loser. Larry, you've been around. Let's
Yeah.
make fun
Chris
of you.
Elliott has been typecast as a loser. Maybe they're just trying to bank off it, which
Yeah.
is sad to me because then his career wasn't as good as it should have been. And I wonder if there's a subconscious connection where they're like, Chris Elliott, that loser, don't
Yeah.
cast him. But he's good. I mean, he has not much to do in this, so this
No.
isn't the proof of
Right.
that. But Chris Elliott is good elsewhere.
And for all I know, that the loser stuff might have been him on this movie, just being like, give me something to
Yeah.
do. Like I can be a supportive, non-threatening coworker, but like,
But give me a
give me
bit.
something to play. Let me
you know
do
what
something.
I'm good at? I'm a
Yeah.
loser.
Well, I think it's actually what it's supposed to. Like my read of it was that he was humbled, like he was an asshole back to Phil, like Larry was, and because he called him like, did he just call himself the talent? I mean, it was all
Prima donna. It says
justified.
prima donna 5 times.
But yeah, he was justified. But then once he realizes, like Phil, over time, he realizes there's one day he woke up and Phil was a really nice guy and got him, you know, like donuts,
Yeah.
scones, and
Raspberry,
coffee.
yeah.
And it was just a simple gesture that went a very far way. So that's why he immediately took like the back seat. He was like, "Oh, I'm learning things today," which is a really nice thing.
But
for someone to
that
do.
means he's a really great guy because a guy at
But-
work who he thought was an asshole for 6 weeks is nice one day, and he's like, "I'll let bygones
You know
be
what?
bygones."
Today
He's a
I'll
nice
be
guy.
nice to him.
So Chris Elliott's like a great dude.
But it doesn't explain why like the town as a whole like loathes him.
Yeah.
Oh, loathes him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I thought is so funny, I think it's my favorite comedic flip in the movie is a Larry, and it's maybe his only laugh thing from me in the movie is he crashes the car with the groundhog in it. Larry says maybe he'll be okay. It explodes. Larry immediately zooms in on it and films it. Does not even care that this man burned alive in his presence. Then the next day he jumps off a building and they have to identify the body physically with the coroner. And it's just Larry going, yeah, it's him. I really liked him. He was a really great guy.
He was a really I really, really liked him. He's a really great guy.
Yeah.
Just love if your body is still there, people feel weird about talking
Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was just doing that because he was scared of, like, he doesn't want to be seen as
It's like
an
we're in
asshole.
public now.
Right.
Exactly.
And like Annie McDowell was clutching him at that time. Is that right? Is she also there to identify?
She's
the body and,
identifying
like,
it as well, yeah.
Sees it, gets sad, and grabs Chris Elliott.
Yeah.
And he's immediately like, "I'm going to say the right thing because the woman is touching me." And
Yeah,
who knows
that's
where
true.
this is going to go?
Yeah. But it is sad how doesn't she just perfunctorily says no to him when he asks her out, as if like that's insane, right? That we would go out.
No,
To Larry?
to whom? Does he ask her out? When does he ask her out?
I thought he asked her. Well, he hits on her. He asked her to come to the party with him at least.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that right?
That's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
I remember
But
him
then
hitting
he-
on
But then he
Nancy.
goes after Nancy.
Yeah.
I guess
At
I
the
mean
party.
Nancy. But okay, you're right. I'm misremembering. It's
Yeah.
Nancy.
Nancy just has like a completely fictitious fake relationship with her
Right.
in his head. Like they're drinking together and he is clearly hitting on her and she's like, I should really get back to the party. Great, let's go together.
Yeah.
And walks in, tries to put her arm around her, tries to put his arm
That's
around
right,
her.
that's right.
And she pushes it off, but he's still like, if you were a stranger, he is doing the body language of someone who is saying, we are together.
Yeah.
And then he goes up on stage to get bid on, hoping that she was going
Oh,
to
right. Yeah.
bet on him, which she does not.
Well, the
And-
body language is different from a different time all throughout this. Like when Bill Murray is initially asking Nancy her situation,
Mm-hmm.
watch that scene imagining it from Nancy's point of view, where a man in a suit finishes his meal,
Yeah.
then sits at an empty table, turns around in the chair
Sits,
and
like,
leans
behind
into
you.
and goes, "What's your name?" Nancy. Where'd you go to school? Who's your 12th grade teacher? That's so fucking
like-
scary.
And she's the whole time she was like, and where did you go to school? And what's your name? And then at the end, he's just like, Nancy, Lincoln High School, Mrs. Walsh.
I'd be like,
And then he leaves, and
he's
she's
going to
just
eat
like-
my face. Yeah. And I think Nancy is the other hint of someone who remembers, because when he's with Annie McDowell at the theater.
No, he's with a different woman,
God.
different random woman at
That
the theater.
does degrade the because even if he remembers fucking this whole town of
Yep,
women.
yep.
But he's with the blonde girl at the theater.
Yeah.
And Nancy walks by, and I guess it's arguable that she looks at them because they're in costumes, but they seem to have a look like she remembers this.
Yeah.
I thought she knows.
Nancy walks by. Well, I thought that was innocent because Nancy walks by and he goes, Nancy. And she looks at him
Oh, he says her name.
and then
Okay.
walks away, which
And
is
he
what
goes,
I would
"That's
do
my
if
ex-"
someone said my name. And he's like, it's my ex-fiance. She doesn't remember me.
Yeah, that's
that
what he
also
said.
that's such a wacky moment in this movie,
Right.
Because it's so rich with detail that I want to unpack. So we just see him
That's
pull up
Clint
to a movie
Eastwood.
theater. He's dressed as Clint Eastwood.
Well, he has just stolen a bag of money from. I feel
Yes.
that they felt they had to address, at the very least, you would steal a bunch of money. So
Right.
they have to have that night. Yeah.
So he's dressed as Clint Eastwood in a costume, and she is his date. She's not a. I didn't get prostitute vibe because she was like, I thought you said we were going to a dress-up party.
Yeah.
Which is what a disappointed date would say if you'd convinced her to put on a maid costume to go to a dress-up party.
Yeah.
But instead, they're going to a movie, and he said, I told you this is my favorite movie. I've seen it 100 times. And she's like, okay, this is weird, Phil. He's like, told you, call me Bronco. She's like, all right, Bronco. What I can bet, I can understand how he can convince the Nancys of the world to have sex with him after learning a lot about them.
Right.
I don't know in one day how you get a woman to go on a date with you, dress as a maid, and call you fucking Bronco.
I made the
and
same
be
note.
fine that you tricked
Yeah.
her into going to a movie that she's still going to see with you. I'm like, what are you? What's that pipe, Phil? What are you packing? What is
and then
going
he goes,
on?
Then he goes up to the ticket window and says, one adult and one, and she goes, adult. Meaning that he's like, I think you're underage also. How did he get her to go along
I think
with
he's just
this?
trying
You
to
have-
be so
You
cool.
have like 12 hours, bro.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
You convince this beautiful young woman to be treated like trash
Yeah,
and dressed like a maid and get tricked to going to a movie that you love and
She's
call you
like,
Bronco.
you know my high school teacher? Yeah, hit me harder.
If you had an infinity days, though,
But it's one. It's one.
Even like you can learn a lot about a person, but
Yeah,
still like
and
you got
I mean that's
max 12 hours to convince
Here's my
this woman
question.
to do this.
If you walked into a situation and a beautiful woman, like your perfect type, started saying everything you were thinking to the level of psychicness, would you get a boner or would you be intellectually curious? Because for me, it's the latter. I would be like, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
Not like, this is sexy.
And I would entertain it, but I would certainly not go to a second location.
Yeah.
Look, I know where you went to. I know your world history teacher, Mr.
Yeah.
Barth. I know you're from Hazlitt, New Jersey. Listen, I need you to put on Dress Like a Cowboy. And I'm like, no, you're clearly magic, but like, no, I've got my own thing.
Here's your
I'm
tip.
not going to dress up for you.
For me, the answer is both.
Brain boner.
Brain boner. Yeah, I'd be
Oh,
a little
boy.
terrified because it would be like, why do you know so much about me?
Yeah.
But it's also like, we never see what he says. Maybe he was just like, he like created this like amazing like moment where they're just like, are we soulmates? You know,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
And there's
You just-
also an incredibly cynical moment where she's not a prostitute, but he is like, here's $900,000. Here's
There's
a maid
also that
costume.
Call me Bronco and get
Call
in
me
the Rolls
Bronco and
Royce.
get- yeah.
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 I want. That's kind of a nice segue. I think you mentioned it as number 2. Do you think Bill Murray is cool and subversive and would be fun to hang out with, or is a jerk?
Absolutely think he's a jerk.
I think he's a jerk.
I think he's got like most highly successful actors from this era. Like he has senioritis, so he's gotten the more he got famous and the more he became Bill Murray, and he knows he's Bill Murray, the more insufferable he became. Not because it's just because he knows he can get away with it. Like Bruce Willis can't do an interview without seeming like he's high the whole time.
He just
because
goes,
he doesn't
"I don't care."
Harrison
Yeah.
Ford has the same thing where he's just like, that was a dumb question. Because like, what are you gonna do? Say
Yeah.
like, hey, let's not call back Harrison Ford.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually feel like Bill Murray, if anything, is more chill now because he's older and because he
Yeah.
has nothing more to prove.
Did a
When
series of downer movies to mellow him out.
And when I read stories about his behavior on set of Groundhog Day, that makes me think you might have just been a prick. Like because I'm also like fully,
And Caddyshack is legendary. Yeah.
I'm fully in the camp that was like AV Club does this series of interviews called 11 Questions where they ask people the same 11 questions, and one of them this season is, can you separate art from artist? And people spend a really long time grappling with that and saying it's tough. I don't separate art from artist, and if you're a prick, like there's nothing is good enough to be a shitty person. Like if I found out Bill Murray sexually assaulted someone on the set of Groundhog Day, great, I'll never watch Groundhog Day again, and if anyone brings it up, I'll say it's a piece of shit and I don't care about that movie. That's a very extreme take, but that's how I feel and that's who I am. And so I read these things about Bill Murray being an asshole on set, and like
Yeah.
Harold Ramis, who everything I've read about him, he's a sweet man, has described his behavior as just really irrationally mean. And
Right.
everyone on set was saying like, yeah, he like Tobolowsky, who's the nicest guy on the planet, was like, I think he was like, it was really cold, and I think that's why he was such a grumpy Gus. And like, this is Stephen Tobolowsky, who's not gonna tell any bizarre tales out of
exactly.
school. Everyone else just like, yeah, he was irrational, he was erratic, you never knew what he was gonna do, he wouldn't take Harold Ramis's calls, and it destroyed their relationship for 25 years. And it's like, not worth it.
Yeah,
Groundhog Day was
yeah.
a classic movie, but like, if it was pulled out of time, like if
Undone.
instead we got a bunch of people who didn't have a miserable 3 months, good. That's a net gain for me.
I'm mixed.
Bold take. Bold.
It is bold.
take.
Because then I ask, like, but is it the art's fault? Meaning, if you could fast forward 1,000,000 years and everyone's dead and all their children are dead, no one remembers this, but an alien watches Groundhog Day, doesn't it have intrinsic value of itself? I don't know the answer. I'm just saying. But that is, I think, one of the most pressing questions of our time for sure,
Yeah.
especially for people who are in the field. I highly recommend, because we've been dancing around it, we should shout it out. I was there too, Matt Gorley's podcast.
Yeah.
The episode with Stephen Tobolowsky. For more info on Bill Murray's prickness, filtered through a very nice man.
Yeah.
Where he's like, and that day he was a little rambly to work
Right.
with. Like, okay, so he punched you in the face.
Right. You have to understand that the water was really cold and they had to wrap his foot in saran wrap and then like a bunch of other stuff and then put his shoe on, and it was such an ordeal that of course he cheated on and abused his wife. You understand? It was so cold.
When he kneed me in the crotch, his foot was cold. Yeah.
On the place that shall not be named, my podcast with Tom.
Great movie podcast.
Yeah, we had a episode where they Ramis and Reitner all had a phrase for what this period for Bill Murray, and they called him the Murricane.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's your first option, right? Come on. Bounce it off the walls for a little while.
Although my favorite / I think the most condemning story from the time is, and if you've been on a set, it's so much more visceral to hear this, when they're shooting Caddyshack and he gets a deaf assistant as a quote unquote like prank because for weeks no one's been able to get in touch with him, and he says, I'll send my assistant to collect notes, and she's deaf. And it's, if you are sitting there with dozens and dozens of people and thousands of dollars and you're responsible, you would have a fucking heart attack. Like, this is insane, unacceptable
Fuck
behavior.
You, Bill Murray. This is, I'm losing a lot of former heroes in the last couple of years, but that's on me. That's my punishment for making heroes out of white men in the past. I should diversify my heroes, and then I will lose less of them.
It's true, but it doesn't make him less able to bring it. That's the thing that's confusing. Because the other trivia thing I liked on IMDb was that, again, this is a prick move, but then you're like, I guess I'm impressed. He would come in not having read the lines and not knowing what scene or what time in the timeline it's supposed to be and just say, good Phil or bad Phil? And they'd go, bad Phil. But what's crazy is in this movie, good Phil genuinely moves you and seems like a good guy.
Yeah.
And bad Phil is an alienating jerk. So he could, maybe he's a sociopath.
I think he might be a sociopath. I'm also like looking at his IMDb right now because one of the other things that I learned in researching for this podcast is Harold Ramis talking about their relationship, which is like, I knew how to make him the best Bill Murray that he could be, the funniest Bill Murray that he could be. I knew how to get that out of him, and I did that, and then whatever happened afterwards happened afterwards. And I'm looking now to see, like, has he done something since Groundhog Day that was as iconic for me? I guess he was good in Kingpin. He made me laugh in Space Jam, but he's playing Bill Murray.
I was going to ask, is this the best Bill Murray movie?
This might be the best Bill Murray movie. I lean Scrooged a lot because Scrooged is
I've
very...
never seen it.
You've never seen it?
I got to.
Goodness gracious, you
His
got
Wes
to.
Is it a
Anderson
musical?
phase.
He has his Wes Anderson phase that he's
because
still
Rushmore and Steve Zissou are really
Yeah.
fantastic.
Rushmore is very funny, and he's funny in it.
Yeah, he's very funny
Yeah.
in Rushmore.
When he just reaches,
makes that movie.
When he reaches back and punches his kid in the head.
When he packs the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Like he's very quirky and charming and like perfectly appropriate in every Wes Anderson movie that he's done, which is what he mostly does now. But I'm still trying like...
Yeah. Also in our
I don't know
classic.
iconic, I don't know classic.
Yeah.
In our Beetlejuice episode, Abe brought up alternate casting ideas, and it totally made me realize the kinship between Bill Murray and Michael Keaton that I didn't know
In
was
fact,
there.
Michael Keaton turned this down.
But like, I feel like they could swap almost any roles.
I
Like,
agree with that.
Michael Keaton could have aced Bill Murray's career, so to speak.
I
if
think
he
they
had
have
to.
similar like face parts too. Like, there's,
Yes.
like some expressions that Bill Murray made in Groundhog Day. I was like, that's kind of Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
that's pretty Michael Keaton, right?
You know
there.
what's also in Tom Hanks was considered, but then they decided against it because he's quote unquote too nice.
Oh yeah.
I bet
for
he
the
could
bad
pull it
part.
off though.
I bet
God.
he could pull it off, but because like Burbs, he's kind of
Yeah.
rough around the edges, but like not in this way, not where he's like kind of a maniac.
Yeah,
that we
right.
do know Keaton
See,
and Murray can
Because
do.
Hanks is genuinely very talented, and we haven't seen. I want to see like a Jared Leto role go to Tom Hanks, or I
Like
want to
he's
see a
just-
movie.
he'll never-
The circle didn't go far enough. I want to
No.
see a movie where they totally bank on you know who Tom Hanks is, and then in Act 3 you're like, what? He's eating the children alive.
Right. He's never really been a full villain. Like Lady Killers, he's doing crimes, but he's like
Right.
goofy and corny. And The
Yeah.
Circle, he is the bad guy, but the whole point of him is that you
Kill him
don't
with
suspect
kindness.
him as a bad guy.
He's the
Like-
whitest
like
of
he's-
white
yeah,
collar.
yeah.
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 No dirty hands
It's-
on Hanks.
Yeah, Hanks will never do.
In Terminal,
anything.
he's trying to bring down America by immigrating illegally. But
Yeah.
that's
Right,
a
I
different
mean,
issue.
In A League of Your Own, he's a drunk, I guess, but
Nah.
He's still lovable.
That's lovable.
there's no crying in baseball.
Haven't seen
Great.
that either.
Oh, I love that movie.
I got movies to watch today.
I was thinking about, I want one of the people I know who does podcasts about movies to let me come on and talk about League of Their Own.
Okay, we'll do
Because
that next time.
Yeah, we should do that next. I love
that movie so much. I love it enough that we have a mutual friend that I will mention off air.
Okay.
And she had never seen the movie, and I had her over to my apartment years ago to watch it. And it was one of those movies that's so important to me that she's like talking and asking questions, and I'm like laughing and distracted and doing bits, that I actually stopped it and was like, what in the nicest way possible, what do you want to watch? And she was like, Parks and Recreation. That's what we're going to watch then. Because
I do that.
I'm showing you this movie because it's important to it's important to me that you know that it's important.
Do you want to watch it or do you
Yeah.
not want to watch it? We don't have to watch it now.
Yeah. Like this is a relationship destroying moment if you don't like this movie. So let's just watch.
Yeah.
Let's just watch something else.
Let's
I
just-
would rather keep this friendship
Let's just
going.
phone it in. Parks and Rec. Let's just
Next
phone
time
it
you're rolling balls deep on that Molly, let's watch it and you'll like it, and then things can
in. Yeah,
progress.
League of Your Own. Tom Hanks.
Okay, well,
Nothing to do with this movie.
I bought you and I own you, so I'm
Yeah.
saying the episode's over now.
Oh, okay.
Or I open the floor for final thoughts or amazing trivia if anyone had anything they wanted to get out. But I definitely want to. I want to
I said
have a little
everything.
time to plug what Dan's working on.
No, I don't do plugs on podcasts anymore.
At all, ever?
No, and I'm doing.
Then I want to have time for Dan to explain his logic behind that. That's interesting in and of itself.
Well, let me get your take on this because I am recording a podcast tomorrow.
That's a plug.
And
you
I
already
was
fucked it up.
I didn't even tell anyone what it is. And I was gonna save the rant for that. Is it weird if I do the same rant at this podcast and the next podcast?
No, because
I-
different
Okay.
audiences.
And
I
you've
guess.
done stand up more than me. I had to
Yeah.
get over it with stand up where I'm like, it's weird to say the same words ever.
Yeah.
I would be like confused if I
Well, that's
did
why
2 stand up things in
that's-
a week. Yeah.
You didn't watch me for the last year of stand up that I did. I never repeated a set.
Good
And that
for
was like,
you.
I went up and
But no
and
one does that.
I stood up there and I was like, hey, I never repeat sets, so if this is bad, don't worry, no one's ever going to see it again. And if it's good, it's even better because we're sharing it together. And this is a special thing. You're the only people who are ever going to see this.
Right.
And I'm doing this to talk about what's going on in my mind right now. And we are a moment in time. You and I, this is part of it, and that's it.
And that's my time.
It buys me so much grace. There's so much goodwill
Oh, I bet.
built into that. But it's also like how I feel about stand-up comedy.
See,
Yeah, that's
I think
Gary Shandling-esque.
That's
Yes.
romantic, but I like
Fuck you.
perfecting
Right.
the thing. So like you're gonna do it here, and then when you do it tomorrow, it
Yeah.
will be even better.
Right.
That's why
John
you're a USC
Mulaney-
film graduate.
John Mulaney is the opposite of that, and he's the best comic living right now. And I watch him, and
It's pretty
all I
good.
see is the poise and dedication and the practice that he's put into this. But it's
Yeah.
just,
I've watched Eddie Murphy was the same way. Like
Yeah.
you could time your watch to it. Oh Hello, I've watched like 4 times. It's very, very
very
enjoyable.
good. And they're very casual in that. I like how
Yes.
casual they are in that. But like
But
his
you can
stand-up
tell by their
specials-
footwork
Yes.
that they're theater kids with perfect choreography
Yeah.
and shit. Yeah.
Right. Bo Burnham's the same way. Everything's
Ah.
the same.
Bo Burnham is like the Marx Brothers, I think,
Yeah.
where it's fucking
Yeah.
distilled
And
down
now
to
he's
the second.
he's so fucking young.
I know.
that he's gonna have a second career before I've had my first.
Right, because he,
You know?
he directed Chris Rock's latest special. He
Yeah.
directed
And-
Gerard Carmichael special and this movie 8th Grade that
Yeah,
is getting
8th
a whole
Grade.
lot of buzz. Yeah.
You worked at that pizza place for a while. That's your first career.
That's true. And I kicked the shit out of those pizzas.
Okay, so here's the thing that I'll plug. The first thing that I'll plug is everyone who is listening to this should listen to Michael's episode of a podcast called At Least There's This, where he talks about the sun. I've just been listening to that podcast for a while, and I came across there's a lot of expats that you all know from the recent diaspora. We all used to work at the same gym, and then the gym closed, so now we're all doing different things. So you hear a lot of familiar voices on there, and one of them is Michael's. And I listened to this after having not been in the company of Michael in months, and a thing that I don't think gets to come across enough in any of the work that we've ever done is just how bright Michael is and how thoughtful he is, and just to hear him talk about the sun and philosophy and science and nature and the human condition, it's very impressive and also just like really heartwarming. You leave with a good feeling. It's just it's Michael talking about how great he thinks the sun is for an hour with a host that is very game for this kind of conversation. And that's my plug.
Thank you so much,
You
man.
got it, buddy.
Terrible day to plug that.
No, it's so hot.
It's 108 degrees here, but that means so much to me. Thank you.
Sure.
So why have you not done plugs in general, or do
The
you have
reason
another
I'm not,
plug first?
it's I consider myself a fairly optimistic person, and I like people in the world. But if you get me at my most cynical, which I try not to be, but the thing that is like the blackness in me that, that I think about frequently is I feel like we've been given this amazing world and all these opportunities, and one of the things that we as a society have been so successful at has been cramming ads into more and more places. Even when if it's the end of the podcast and it's the way that all podcasts end. It's such a natural thing to be like, okay, so where do you plug in and where can people find you?
Yeah.
And everyone just like robotically answers that. It's still an ad. It's still like we've
definitely
found. I watch a lot of YouTube videos and they will have like an ad that is embedded. Like you'll see, before you watch this, you can skip this ad in 3 seconds, but first we're going to tell you about cars. We're going to tell you about this movie. Fine, skip. Now I'm watching this vlog. This vlogger that I like is going to talk, and he will self-interrupt the video to be like, hey guys, before I give you the rest of the video, I want to talk about SeatGeek. SeatGeek is sponsoring this video. SeatGeek is the smartest way.
Oh, I haven't encountered that.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all the most popular vlogs have this where it's like, SeatGeek is the smartest way to do XYZ. Okay, I've told you about SeatGeek. Promo code is in my description below. Now back to the video. And then you get the rest of the video.
Wow.
And then at the end of the video, it's like, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you click and subscribe. Also, there's merch. You can buy my merch. It's 20% off right now. It's in the description. And also, we're going on tour right now. You could buy that. And like, I understand how advertising fuels art, but when I think about the future, I just think about there are people who know that there are more places you can cram in ads, and no one is stopping them, and we're just getting surrounded by ads all the time. And I'm sure this is a Bill Hicks rant,
not stoppable,
from the
by
60s.
The way.
But we just found more ways to capitalize on people's attention to try to sell them things that they didn't sign up for, and it drives me crazy.
Never will stop. We'll only accelerate to infinity.
I see it both ways in this. I totally get exactly what you're saying about like the SeatGeek, or you can't create a worse name for mispronouncing.
The service sucks, by the way. No,
you just started courting sponsors,
but not them. It works. It works really poorly. I've used it several times.
Oh, that's amazing. Here we go. So I totally know what you're saying when it's just like this: get money, give me merch, that stuff. But plugging, which I know is still a form of an ad, someone else, you're right about I've had that observation too, where it's that robotic kind of like, and then we have to do this part of the thing and no one's heart is in it, and everyone robotically like asks the question, they act like, so what are you working on, which is just like a fakeness, you know. And I get all
my heart is in it, in that, but I want my friends to
that's
plug
what I was
to
gonna
get
say.
more
So
people. Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, I was like, that's why I see both ways of it, is that it comes from this beautiful place where it's just like, this is my friend. I like, especially as you said, we had, like our gym closed, especially of all times. It's just like, I want people to be like eyeballs, and whatever I can do, it may not be much, but maybe it's the only one that they saw of this one. And they listen to our Frame Rate podcast, and like Tom or you or Dave, they've never even heard of them before by some weird blind spot, but then they're like, you know what, that Tom guy was better than like Abe and Mike, now I've just put like food in Tom's mouth.
That's why he'll never be back on the show.
I absolutely understand that, and there are two things that I'll say, and then a third thing. And
I'm making the watch sign.
One of them is I'm not going to be mad at any podcast in the world that does the things that people do. Two, I completely understand the impulse, and I know that there are a lot of audience people out there that are just like, I want to know how I can support you further. What can I what can I do? And I understand that comes from a place of goodness, but I'm just still not going to do it. Like I like, everybody has a platform. I'm using mine to, in the plugs section of podcasts, talk about something else that someone else did that I like.
Yeah, man, I like it.
Do.
Those are your signatures. That and your rainbow tank top and your backwards baseball cap.
I wouldn't worry about it too much, though. I would say, tell me, or I'd say, have you looked into single premium life? Because I feel like that might be the ticket for you.
Okay, good.
Welcome to the...
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!